Good morning. We're going to convene the county board for March 17th, 2026. If you'd rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2 is amendments to the agenda. I don't believe we have any amendments, but I do want to move an item. 9.1, I see that the people that are interested in 9.1 are here now, and so is the mosquito control. And mosquito control has got to go over to Carver after they're done. So between 6.1, after 6.1, I'd like to move 9.1 up before 7.1. So we're going to move that up if we can have a motion to.
Mr. Chair, I will make that motion to move that. Thank you.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we amended our agenda. Okay, item 3 is to approve the minutes of March 3rd. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 3rd county board meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 4 is recognition of interested citizens, and this is limited to items not on the agenda, and it's 5 minutes per person per subject. Speakers are asked to approach the microphone for the benefit of viewers and interested citizens. Now, I do want to make an additional comment here on what this is for. It's not a forum for political candidates to announce that they're running for something, that they're a candidate for something, whether it's whatever office it is. That's not what this is for. It's for issues that are not on our agenda, but issues of interest to the county board. Now, in kind of an equal time concept, because we will have elected officials come and address us about issues. So if somebody that's running for something wants to speak about an issue, that's fine as well. But so, does that seem reasonable, that approach, everybody?
Mr. Chair, I think we adopted that in 2012. Is that right, Ron? Or?
I don't recall the exact year, but that's
Okay.
that's correct.
All right.
Adopted that principle I'm just
That-
discussing?
Yeah.
Okay, well then we're just refreshing it.
Yep, thank you.
So, anyone interested in wanting to come before the board? And I would think, just to give some pointer to any person running, you probably have issues that make you want to run. So if you have something interesting to the board and you want to come and talk about that someday, that's great too. Okay, consent agenda. These generally pass as one motion. I'll read the consent agenda. 5.1 is to adopt resolution number 2026-50, authorizing interim agreement with the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce for the Drive for 5 program and a 2026 budget amendment. 5.2 is adopt resolution number 2026-52, authorizing into a contract with Northwest Asphalt, Inc. for the CASA 16 modernization project. 5.3 is adopt resolution number 2026-61, approving interim use permit to operate a temporary asphalt plant for the 2026 construction season. Valley Paving, Inc., applicant, and Ted G. and Mary R. Cornder, Living Trust, property owners. 5.4, adopt resolution number 2026-63, amending Scott County zoning ordinance number 3, chapter 1, title and application, and chapter 8, home occupations and home extended businesses to improve code enforcement. 5.5, adopt resolution number 2026-64, amending Scott County zoning ordinance number 3, chapter 20-4, use table to permit indoor commercial recreation as an administrative use in the Rural Business Reserve District. 5.6, approve appointment of a citizen to an advisory committee. 5.7 is approve payroll processing of personnel actions. And 5.8 is to approve record of disbursements and approve claims. That's our consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're on to 6.1, which is to receive information from the Mosquito Control District. And I must apologize, I don't have my mosquito sound effect queued up for this morning. I usually do, but I think it got frozen in the snow.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you very much for inviting us today, and thank you also for amending your schedule to accommodate us. And I must admit, I do look forward every year to the mosquito buzz, but I'll just have to play it in my own head. My name is Daniel Huff, and I am the Executive Director for the Metropolitan Mosquito Control District. We very much appreciate the wonderful cooperation and partnership with Scott County. Scott County is very ably served and represented by Commissioner Beer and Commissioner Wolf, who serve on our commission, which is made up of 18 county commissioners from the 7-county metro. Alex here is going to provide an overview of what happened last year and maybe a little foretaste of the feast to come. That's the mosquito feasting on us for this summer. And we also provided the clerk with our annual report, so I hope that you will read and share with your family and friends that wonderful document. So thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Alex with your permission, sir.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Alex Carlson, the Public Affairs Manager at Metropolitan Mosquito Control District, and I look forward to these presentations every year, not just to provide an update on what we're doing, but because you are often the front lines when you're talking to residents who have questions about what the helicopters are doing or what our community does to prevent mosquitoes. And so we hope to provide some background information about who we are, what we do, and so you can kind of help pass that on to the residents that you're interacting with. Let's see if am I able to control the?
Yes.
All right. Oh, there we go. That worked. All right, so just a quick background. We've been around since 1958, and our governance is by elected county commissioners. As Dan mentioned, we have Commissioner Beer and Commissioner Wolf. Commissioner Beer is also on our executive committee. Our service area covers over 2,900 square miles, and we have over 3 million people in our service area. So a lot of different people with different demands and different needs, and a lot of different, geographic areas with different climates and different wetland habitats and things like that. So a lot of different areas to maintain and monitor. The median home pays about $11 per year district-wide. So that goes to all the services that we provide at MMCD, which include integrated pest management. We do monitoring of surveillance or monitoring of mosquitoes to ensure that we're knowing what species are out there. So it all starts with finding out, if there's a video here, let's see if it'll play. Oh, no. Nah, that's okay. Just imagine a cool video going on of all the activity happening for mosquito control. But we all start with surveillance. Our field staff go out first to figure out what mosquitoes are in the environment, checking out wetlands, and we do some adult surveillance as well to collect mosquitoes. That really is the basis of our program, determining what's out there first. And then we do the control methods based on what we find. So the approach is called integrated pest management, but the idea is we want to target the specific species that are going to be most harmful to people, whether they're disease spreaders or aggressive human biting and just kind of going to make you have an uncomfortable evening. Those are the species we want to focus on, and we want to limit any impacts on non-target species, which include other insects as well as wildlife, obviously human health and pets and things like that. So our approach is really taking all this into consideration to make sure that we're being as safe and effective as possible. We also do other services in addition to mosquitoes. So we do black fly treatments. So anybody who lives along rivers, which affects this area, in the spring we'll oftentimes see, or throughout the summer, we'll see a big surge of black flies or biting gnats, which emerge from moving waters. And so we do some surveillance and treatment for those species. We do monitor tick populations. So we don't do any control measures for ticks, just because there's not a very effective way to do that right now in a widespread methodology. But we do monitor and work with county public health to report changes in tick behavior. We have lots of public education, website, interactive maps, lots of information on our website, which I'll promote later on. And then we also do source reduction. I'll talk about how we remove waste tires. But the big stories from 2025, it was a record year for West Nile virus. Our main mosquito-borne disease that we have here is West Nile virus. It's spread by infected birds, that a mosquito bites a bird and then that same species of mosquito bites a human, and that's how the disease gets spread. So we had 45 human cases in the Twin Cities last year. And actually, I think since this slide has been, I think that's been actually up to 47 because there's always a delay in reporting from the Department of Health. So that was the highest, the previous record was 28. And so that was a significant fight for us last year, was to locate the areas where these species were active and try to prevent them. The big story from last year was the main species responsible for West Nile transmission peaked much earlier than normal. So typically we see a pattern where as the disease cases are increasing in mosquitoes, the overall population is going down. So it's usually late summer when overall mosquito numbers are pretty low. But this year we saw the peak of disease activity around mid to late July when those species were also peaking. So high numbers of mosquitoes, high percentage testing positive for the disease, and that led to a lot of human cases. So that's going to be front of mind this year when we're going out to do our control measures, make sure that we can reduce, human health concerns as much as possible. The other big story last year was the midsummer surge. We had a lot of news stories last year about the midsummer surge that we predicted, and it pretty much came to fruition. Around the first week of July was our peak for mosquito activity, and that was because of the cattail mosquitoes, which returned for the first year since 2020 in big numbers. Those are species that actually overwinter in the water, so they're out there right now below the ice, attached to vegetation, and they're waiting for the snow to melt and the spring to come for them to start to work their way to the surface, and then they all emerge once in one big brood around the beginning of July. And so we're going to be watching out for those again this year. And then last year we had a very low spring, not very many spring mosquitoes. We had a low precipitation at the end of winter last year, so not a lot of snow melt, not a lot of spring rains, so it's a slow start to the season. The rain eventually came and so did the mosquitoes. This is what it looked like for the graph for last year. So the gray line is the 10-year average, and then the green line was 2025. So again, you see the peak was mid-July, July 8th was when those cattail mosquitoes surged. We also had the right rain that time of year so that we had the summer floodwater mosquitoes were peaking. So a big surge of mosquitoes right then. And then we pretty much stayed average from the rest of the summer. So we had to do a lot of control measures because we saw a lot of rain and a lot of mosquito activity. So just on the left, you see our overall numbers for each type of treatment, helicopter, drone, and ground, or just by hand or backpack. Which is our most acres treated since 2016. We used a big part of that was because we expanded our drone program, so we're able to get to more acres than we do when we just do it on the ground. On the ground, people have to wear the full chest waders, they have to get into the water, they have to really take their time to get around and get to every area, whereas the drone can be a lot quicker, safer, because there's no worries about tripping and falling and stuff like that. And just a very effective way to get to the area where you want to try to target those mosquitoes. So we're going to be continuing to using drones this year and for many years to come because it's a very effective part of our program. And then for adult control, we do supplement our larval control, which is treating the mosquitoes in the water, with adult control, which is treating the adult mosquitoes. We really try to use this method sparingly. Larval control is the safest, most effective method, but adult control is also very effective when it comes to combating disease cases. So in the case of a high West Nile activity, we'll do some adult control, or in partnership with local municipalities, like if there's a big summer event, they might ask us to spray for an area, and we'll do some additional surveillance before we do that, but we'll consider that. But last year was our lowest year of adult acres treated in the past 10 years. So we're really focusing our methods on the larval side versus the adult side. Just some numbers from Scott County year over year. Both 2024 and 2025 were very active years. So not a huge change. The one big change I'll note is tires. You can see that jump from 1,600 to 8,000. Part of this is because last year we combined with Carver County. We did a drop-off event instead of individually going to homes and picking up tires. And so we weren't able to separate very detailed which came from which county. So that's the total for both counties, but that's still a significant jump. And I'll talk about tires, but tires have become a major part of our program. We're making some adjustments to help with the demand that we've been seeing. And then the other thing, not a lot of people from Scott County called us last year. So we always encourage people to call us if you're having issues with high numbers of mosquitoes, or even if you just have questions about some of the activities that we're doing. For the budget side of things, so this is the fiscal change. So again, the median home in the Twin Cities pays about $11 per year. So the year over year change for Scott counties, for the entire county, is about $111,000. And then this is the big question we always get when we come to these is, what is the forecast for 2026? And I had to submit these slides 2 weeks ago, and so there's actually been some changes since then. It gets very hard to predict this far in advance, the mosquito change. But that first bullet point, 2 years ago, our entomologist was saying he was predicting a slow spring because we were very behind on the precipitation from 2026. That changed over the weekend with biggest snowfall we've had of the year. So that might change things, and we might have a little bit more active spring than we were initially anticipating. We'll see if more precipitation continues. I think we're back to the kind of average now. So it won't be a completely quiet spring, but it won't be quite the surge potentially. We are projecting another surge of cattail mosquitoes again. So that midsummer surge that we talk about, we had a decent amount of rain last year, and so our model, which is on the bottom right there, projects that we're going to be, slightly above where we ended up last year, slightly below last year's projection. And last year we were able to do a little bit more additional treatments because we didn't have any spring mosquitoes, so we were able to kind of reallocate those resources and focus on cattail. And then the other thing to note is there is a potential for increased Lyme disease risk this year. We're seeing some, because ticks have a 3-year life cycle, the larval ticks that were collected last year were collected later in the year than normal, and has had a high infection rate for Lyme disease. And so those larval ticks that survive will reemerge as nymphs this spring, and there's a potential that they have a higher infection rate than normal. So just people need to be on precaution. We're going to send out some press releases and notifications when tick season hits to make sure people are taking those extra precautions, because Lyme disease risk might be a little bit higher this year. Tires I alluded to.
Question, if I could.
Yeah, sure.
On the cattles and so forth, pretty much every association, townhouse association have water retention ponds that are loaded with cattails. Should the associations be completely relying 100% on your work, or should they be supplementing with any product themselves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would recommend that they contact us if they want to do some additional treatments, because chances are we are monitoring those wetland sites, and we're likely doing treatments already. So it might be doubling up or be doing more than is necessary. So I would just recommend that they contact us. It might be the case where they could do some supplementary treatments, but I'd recommend they reach out to us first so we can consult with them.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that topic, it would almost be neat if there was some sort of a tool where people could go and look and see and track their wetlands, if we could find something like that.
Is that a setup question?
Thank
Well-
you, Commissioner Beer. I might have a slide on
Okay,
that.
oh, great.
Just
That's
about
awesome.
2 or 3
Wow,
slides
so
from now.
timely.
So,
So timely.
yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate the layup there. But just quickly on tires, so this isn't a change for Scott County because we piloted this with Scott and Carver County last year, but instead of going to individual residences and picking up tires, we're holding drop-off events where people can come to us. We're hosting these at the Scott County Fairgrounds, so people can come on select days, drop off up to 10 tires per household that will take, no questions asked. And then we'll take those and we'll recycle them on our expense. So it's a good way for people to eliminate this mosquito breeding habitat.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Alex, no questions asked, but what's the fee? There's got to be a fee to take these tires. 10 tires?
Thank you, Commissioner Beer. There's no fee for residents.
No fee.
You
for
do have to
residents.
show proof of residence, so we do check to make sure that you can prove that you're a Scott
of
County
residence.
resident.
Proof
And then
of residence,
we take
free tire drop off, up to 10.
Up
So
to 10
township
tires.
ditches, there's no reason there should be any tires in township ditches.
yes, absolutely. That's our
Free-
goal.
Free tire recycling, and we'll get those dates out when we know them.
We will. Yeah, they actually are on our website. So we
Great.
already have the
Awesome.
dates
Perfect.
published
Perfect.
for
Excellent. Thank you.
2026. So you can go to mmcd.org and find out. And soon we'll have the sign up available so you can make an appointment to drop off your tires.
Thanks.
I set up these last couple slides with some of the most frequently asked questions. Because like I said, you guys probably get questions from residents. We get these questions commonly, so we like to just make sure everybody's educated so it can pass on this information. So number one question we get is, I'm having issues with mosquitoes or black flies or ticks. What can I do? And so we say, first go to our website. We have great resources on our website where we have a residence guide where you can look at tips for your yard, for your neighborhood, for yourself, for your kids, for your pets. Got about 50 different simple tips, everything from setting up an oscillating fan in an outdoor seating area to blow away mosquitoes, to things you can put in your retention ponds or in your yard or things like that to help reduce mosquito activity. Recommended bug sprays, everything like that. Also call us. We always like when people call us and they say, I'm having issues with mosquitoes. Tell us what your yard is like. We'll offer as much advice as we can on what you can do. Another question we get a lot is, what are you using? What products are you using? Are they safe for me, my kids, my pets? Wildlife, pollinators, everything like that. We live in Minnesota too. We love the environment. We love, being outdoors. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting the environment. And so all of our products are listed on our website, but our focus on larval control makes sure that we're not harming what we call these non-target species. The larval control materials that are dropped from helicopters or from drones are very specific to mosquito larvae that's active in the water. So we're not going to have issues with pollinators or fish or other animals that might be impacted. It's very specific, and so we know we can target the species we want to eliminate or reduce and not have wider impacts on the environment. And
Okay,
again,
another question on this one. Let's say out of the metro area, where they're not doing the larva treatment in some, lakeshore person wants to some way control mosquitoes. Is there a product that would not kill, like, say, dragonflies or other insects that would control mosquitoes, or is there anything that's narrowly?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our residence guide is another great resource for that because we do list some of those active ingredients that people can purchase if you have a wetland or a small pond, something like that. BTI is kind of the main one that's widespread. It's sold as bits or dunks, where you can put those in the water, and that's very specific to mosquito larvae. It's been widely tested on many other types of non-target species. It's very effective and safe. So that's kind of the most commonly over-the-counter one that everybody can get. But there are other options as well. It kind of depends on the type of wetland that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Last question, can I ride in the helicopter? No, fortunately. I can't even ride in the helicopter. As Commissioner Beer alluded to, we have a great website, and actually we just published our new public maps last Friday. So we have some new, it's kind of a cool, more updated design, but basically you can type in your address or you can zoom into any area and view all the mosquito habitats in your yard. You can click on a site and see when we last visited it, what we found, what treatments were done, if any treatments were done. It goes back about 20 years. So when you mention these homeowners that might have retention ponds or something, they can look and see if we're monitoring it. If it shows up on our maps, that means we're checking it, and then you can click on it and see how often we visit it and things like that. Different websites have different designations. Some are treated on a schedule. Some are treated every time it rains. Kind of depends on the exactly what's in that wetland. But we really try to make sure that we have everything covered. And then we do a lot of public outreach. I'm always putting in a plug for coming to your events, coming to your parades. We will be at the Scott County Fair again this year. This is our mascot. In the foreground there, her name is Victoria, so she makes appearances at parades and other public events. We also might see our giant mosquito float. But if you know an event or in a group that we should connect with, please let us know. We're always looking to do some more public outreach. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Okay, questions or comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I would just add that that tool is really amazing. If you wonder, you don't have to wonder. You can look it up and see the tracking. I had a question about a pond in and around my area, and it was tested, and never found anything, which was crazy, but true. And then the other thing is, with this district, if you ever wonder, oh, there's mosquitoes, what's this $11 paying for, which I don't think anyone asked that. Go outside the district. Go enjoy a lake someplace outside the district or something and find out control versus out in the wild and see what kind of a difference it makes. So when they carry you away, yeah, you save on transit costs because, they're carrying you, but
It's a weight loss program.
yeah, and exactly. So thanks for everything you guys do.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we all appreciate what you do every summer because it is a dramatic difference when you leave the metro and you go to greater Minnesota. Mosquitoes, it's a whole different scenario there. So thank you. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah, great.
hello to our harbor friends.
Yeah.
Will do.
Thank you.
So this is where we're moving 9.1 up for discussion.
You're up.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Item 9.1, so this was an item that was brought to you at the last board meeting on March 3rd. And at that point, we felt that the township board was fully apprised of this information at the staff level discussions, and it was brought to our attention shortly before that maybe that wasn't the case, and therefore we tabled this item. The town board did discuss this item last week at their regular scheduled township board meeting. And it sounded like maybe they weren't willing to take on this property that we're talking about here. Subsequent to that time, I've made it clear with the township board or the staff level that if they don't want this property, that we'll simply just sell the property. So they've got a drainage issue underneath the roadway that they own, and I think they want to carve out a piece of property for a drainage structure on this parcel. And really has nothing to do with us, and they can clearly do that on their own if they own the parcel, or if we sell the parcel, they can work with that property owner and do that as well, and then have the discretion to do what they want with the rest of that land, if they want to keep it or if they want to move on from that. So that's what this item is about. And so the RBA as it's written, so some language was added in there that it's a little bit fluid such that we can convey the property to them. So we still have some discussion that's going on. And if they decide that they don't want the property, then we can sell that property on our own, putting it on the market. So that's what this is about. So with that, I would make the recommendation that the county board pass resolution number 2026-19, releasing a use restriction and authorizing the conveyance of land to Spring Lake Township or disposing of the parcel per state statute. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? Do you want to do this as one motion, or do you want to remove from the table and then adopt as a separate motion?
If we can do it in one motion, that'd be great.
Okay,
And I see we can do that, so I would make that motion
okay.
for 2026-19.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Mr. Chair, do we want to take any
Yeah,
comments from? the-
yeah, in this
Okay.
case, we're gonna allow representatives from Spring Lake to say what they would like. Yes, yeah, just state your name and so forth, and
Good morning, I'm Matt Stordahl with Stonebrook Engineering. I'm the township engineer for Spring Lake Township. The project that we have coming up here is to replace a drain tile that was put in, we don't know when, far before any documentation that we found it because it failed. And it's created a landlocked water body that's put our 180th Street in jeopardy, actually. The last fall, it was about 9 inches from going over the top of the road. So that's the problem we're trying to fix. The big thing is just to understand the schedule for what the county would like to do. The township doesn't have a desire to own the property. We do need an easement, a very small easement on the parcel for the outlet structure. But of course, as the discussions have started with this issue, the question became, how can we get the easement so we can get this project completed sooner than later? And how can we, the township, work with the county to best move the property to somebody that might actually have a desire to own it or have a use for it? So the biggest thing is timing. If the property being sold, transferred, whatever, to somebody else that does have an ultimate use for it, if that's something that happens very quickly and the township is able to negotiate with those people very quickly, then the project can kind of move on as we would hope as far as schedule goes. If it's something that takes a chunk of time, then all of a sudden maybe our project is in jeopardy for this year. That's the biggest concern that we have, is just to try to understand the timing. If there's a way for us to work with the county ahead of it being transferred, if there's a way for it to be transferred where the restrictions that are typically put on these deeds, it sounds like those can be released. But there was just a lot of questions, which of course is where call it confusion, if you will, has developed and a want of understanding. So apologize if there was some confusion or miscommunications, but that's really what it came down to.
thank you. You want questions here or of Tony?
Well, let's see where this goes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had this on, was it last meeting we had this on? Or two meetings ago, and it was kicked, and there was a discussion, like, yes, we've talked to the township, yes. And so, I guess, and we talked just a little bit, happened to walk up together this morning. Are there restrictions if this land were to go as is to the township? Is there any handcuffs or restrictions or any issues that would preclude the township from doing what they need to do with this outlet structure?
No, there's not. The drainage is under the roadway. It's not on our property. So the property that we'd be conveying to the township would be free and clear. So there's no cost to the township for us to convey that property. And it would be free and clear of any title issues as well.
And so if that was the case, is there any reason why the township would not want that chunk of dirt to do whatever they want?
And then sell it.
And then sell it? I mean, it sounds like there's some value to it. I don't remember what the appraisal was. I'm just curious about that piece. I know it's not a, location idea, but is there anything, if what we're talking about here, convey that chunk of dirt to the township to do what you want to do on timelines, there's no timeline issues? I don't know the answer to that question, that's why I figured that I'd ask.
Well, just a quick comment here. The resolution gives a choice, basically, to the township.
Yep.
Take it as a conveyance directly to you,
Or work with
or
the
we'll
next.
sell it.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like the resolution, the way that you have it drafted is something that works for everybody.
Okay. Did you want to comment more on that, Tony?
No, that's why we left it as fluid, because they're, I'm not aware if they've talked to their full board members yet, so they discussed it last week at their meeting. They'll likely bring it again maybe to their next month's meeting, so that's why it's left open. So we'll work with them and make that final decision if we're gonna convey it to them or we're gonna just sell it outright.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any more discussion or questions, comments? We do have a motion and a second, and it was to remove from the table and then adopt resolution 2026-19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're back to item 7.1, which is to receive information on Scott County Delivers topic, assessing property taxes. Go ahead.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Today, we're here to discuss assessing and property taxes, so I'd like to take a moment to thank the panelists for their time contributing to this packet. I'll note that we have several people from Property and Taxation Services, but that we also have Mr. Lenz from our Office of Management and Budget. We'll take a moment just to introduce ourselves. My name is Katie Mollick. I work in Quality Improvement.
I'm Jeff Smodish, Employee Relations Director.
Danielle Connie, Income Maintenance Supervisor.
Jen Schwartz, Economic Assistance Director.
Danny Lenz, Office of Management and Budget.
Christian Husky, Deputy County Assessor.
Rhonda Otto, County Auditor Treasurer.
Michael Thompson, Property and Taxation Services Manager.
With that, do you have any questions that you would like to ask before we get into the conversation?
No, I don't think so. I think we've, through a couple of different forms, we've heard a lot of the content, whether it's at scale or with a workshop and so forth. But yeah, go ahead. Maybe questions I'm sure will emerge. Go ahead.
Just one curiosity question. Do you have a twin? I'm looking at Michael because you seem to be everywhere.
I am on my world tour right now.
Okay, I didn't know.
6 cities left after today.
The taxes tour, got it. All right, welcome. Good to see you again.
He'll sign autographs after, Commissioner. All right, and Jen, if you'd like to ask our first question.
Sure. I think throughout the information, there were several mentions of the complexity of the Minnesota tax system, that we have one of the most complex systems. I'm curious, are there things we are doing to advocate either at the state or local level to try and make changes and headway in that area? Are there things we can do to change the complexity, and are we working towards that?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we work with, through the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers, they have a legislative subcommittee that deals with reviewing proposed legislation. And so through that, we weigh in on different proposals that might make the system more complex. And so we tend to not get into policy type advocation. That's not our business, but if we can provide information as to the impacts of the administrative costs and things like that, we do that. And then we also will look at individual proposals through our own legislative liaison and weigh in as a county when it's supported by leadership for those same purposes. We're not directly involved in an effort to reform the property tax system as it currently sits. But I am aware of some different efforts along those lines that we can inform through AMC and some of our county and city associations that we definitely provide information and opinions to.
If we look at page 14, there is a chart that talks about the Minnesota State Board of Equalization order history. I was wondering if you could tell me what is the importance of avoiding a state board order change?
Yeah, so this goes back to 2006, and we take this out of the Department of Revenue's assessment practices report, and it highlights that there are certain standards that have to be met with your assessed valuations to make sure that they're where they're supposed to be. They're matching up pretty well with what properties are selling for. And if we are not within the certain mandated range, the state board comes in and makes these changes. And what that can do is have the impact on our taxpayers of disenfranchising them by eliminating some of their appeal rights in a sense, because we send out notices in March and we say, this is your property value, this is your classification. Property owners have a chance to call us to review that information informally appeal, exchange information, and potentially have a value reduction through that process. If they're not satisfied through the informal appeals, they can then attend different various board options of appeal and potentially have a value changed that way. And then the state board occurs in June after all that has already happened. So if the state determines that our original assessment didn't fall in line with where it needed to be, they can make across-the-board adjustments to all properties in a specific township or city, land or buildings or both. And this chart goes to show that they do that every year. And at that point, the appeals processes outside of tax court have concluded. So there's no negotiation after that. You just get a letter in the mail saying, hey, the state board stepped in and changed your value, and this is your new value. And outside of a tax court appeal, that's what it will be. So we do everything we can to avoid that from happening. And I think 2006, where this data starts, was the last time Scott County had any state board orders. So we're proud of that.
I can jump in on page 17. Really impressive, the work you've done since, going back to, say, 2010, 2011. Really kept that consistently, looking at the range between 90% and 105% for the sales ratio. What do you attribute that? Like, what have you done that's been successful to keep that just, steady?
Well, we've implemented new technologies. We have a much better system that we're using now where we can run reports intermittently throughout all of our processes and make sure that essentially we can predict exactly what the Department of Revenue's reports will be after we submit our information. So there's a ton of error reports. Our list of error reports grow every year to make sure that we're catching anything that that might stand out in a Department of Revenue report, and that we're able to calculate like within a hundredth of a percentage point, basically what they're gonna end up determining by using their own formulas in our system. So it's, technology has made our jobs a lot easier, and of course, the staff that we employ, I think second to none with our assessing staff. They're, as another, as page 15 kind of highlights, we have the most senior accredited assessors per employee in the metro area. I think we're able to retain really good educated and accredited staff that know what they're doing.
I just want to jump in here too. I think one of the things too is I can kind of point out is when I joined in 2023, I think we had about 35, 38 error reports. And since then, I think this last assessment, we had 63. So one of the things we keep doing is anytime we identify a potential thing that could pop up through reviews or just even challenges, or maybe this line item doesn't match with this one, we create an error report to make sure that we're always improving on those in the future. And not to say, when you have 64,000 properties, there can be variabilities with different variables, but understanding how the data is structured and always improving on it, I think, is one of the reasons too that we're able to kind of have more accurate values. But then I'd also agree with Mike too that there's been some quality improvements. With technology, we've been able to automate the process of reviewing our sales data and having it earlier, so it gives us more time to actually refine those values.
If I could jump in for a second and drag you all back somewhere that I care about, because I heard you mention your people, and as the Employee Relations Director for the county, obviously that's dear to my heart. Michael, Christian, if you could, because the two of you all sort of touched on two ends of a thing, if you could maybe unpack anything that you're doing to, again, attract, retain those highly qualified folks that you have, and if you could expand a little bit on some of the quality improvements that may be related to the talent you have in your personnel. It would be interesting to me. Well, I do think that we're competitive. We don't pay the most. There's definitely, the cities tend to pay a little bit more than the counties in that regard, but we do offer flexibility, and I think that has helped immeasurably as far as retaining the good people that we have. I think we prioritize a work-life balance, that we understand that people that are happy at home are gonna be better workers. And I think we've also got a little, if I might say, a little bit of a reputation that people respect, what we're doing at the Scott County office, and are interested in coming and finding out, and learning from us how we're doing things.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I joined in 2023, and Mike had been a resource for me just in understanding the profession, what things are really important to kind of study up on and sharpen your skills. And even at some of these summer seminars or different organizations that we're a part of as an assessing career, you interact with people from different organizations. And, one thing I try to kind of echo too is that make sure we're a resource to even our partners down in Olmsted or different areas when we talk about rates, or if we developed a manual, how can we share that and how we triangulate what we're using to make sure everything's viewed the same way. But you had kind of mentioned when it came to efficiency, I think our biggest strength is our people, because some of the improvements we made, we just come out of the implementation, but we made a really great hire that actually used to work for our software vendor. So he's able to query many different data lits and things that, to find out how we can convert or improve the product in general. So really when it comes down to efficiency, I feel like we work together to identify the problem and then find something that's not going to take staff resource to maintain. I think that's a really important thing, because sometimes you only have so much time in a year. So if you can automate things like sales downloads or the reproduction of reports that maybe took a week or two, we kind of gain some of that time back through efficiency.
Thank you so much. I'd love to hear it.
This connects well with, I think, page 29. I did have a question earmarked for asking about, this is taxable parcels per assessor, and we have Scott County listed. I was gonna ask you what contributes to this productivity, but I think you went through some of that. So then, I guess, if you have anything else about that, but also you mentioned positions within cities. Can you explain the county's role with assessing in Scott County, or cities can do this, or just, can you help explain that more?
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout the 87 counties in Minnesota, it's done a little bit different from county to county. We do assess all of the property in Scott County. And I think that's probably similar to about a third of the other counties in the state. There's also a segment of counties that rely more on cities to have their own assessing offices, or even hiring what they're called local assessors, which are contracted, independent contractors, who may be responsible for a number of townships in a certain county. So I think we are very fortunate that we have the control over the assessment for the entire county, because it just lends to consistency. And then just economies of scale, we have the ability to do it at a much cheaper price than, say, if you now all of a sudden you have a city assessor leading up an assessing team, and they maybe even have a different software system that they pay for. So I think studies have proven very clearly that when you have multiple different assessing offices within one county, it's more expensive for taxpayers. So that kind of answers your first question. And then just back to the efficiencies of, if you look at that page 29, there's only, I think, one county in the 8,000 or more all the way on the right side, and then maybe two counties in that next echelon. And then, so we are in that third highest kind of grouping. So if you looked at it that way, I think we're probably ranked 82nd or something in the entire state for how many parcels each of our appraisals handles on an annual basis. And we've touched on a lot of the reasons for that with our efficiencies and technology improvements. But we also have, other things we could mention, we could go on, but we have mobile devices that we're able to collect data on, rather than writing on a piece of paper and then coming back in and entering it into a system. We also are one of the only counties in the state that have leveraged high resolution street level imagery. So we contract for that every 5 years, and it allows us to do alternative types of property reviews, which save us a lot of money and still meet the state standards.
Regarding the efficiency and technology that you mentioned, do you see any other opportunities for continuous growth?
I think AI is going to be a big one that we just don't even know what the possibilities are going to be. I'm aware that it's going to probably revolutionize what we do in the next 5 years, or maybe even sooner, with predictive modeling, which is a lot of what we do for our valuation. It lends itself very well to that. And then even things like customer service improvements. I mean, right now, you call somebody when you want to appeal, and you talk to that individual, you exchange information. I could see sometime down the road where you go online and attach whatever appraisal PDFs you might have, or information that you want the AI assistant to review, and then get an answer immediately back with either, yeah, you're right, the value can be changed, here's your new value, or did you consider this, and that, and maybe there's just so many possibilities that we could imagine that will be forthcoming due to AI improvements.
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing currently also is, I kind of think of it as a focus on future proofing, because we don't know exactly what we're going to need, but right now we're using GIS is doing planimetric data, so we have aerial measurements also from topographical, so we can measure roofs and different things. But using that over time will be something that AI will leverage in order to have more accuracy. Another thing that we're looking at is that a lot of things are going cloud-based, just to kind of stay out of the weeds, but you can have it hosted by a service, or you can have it on a cloud that's hosted by your vendor, and that's where a lot of our software is going to be headed. So we're working on ways to make our data uniform so that conversion process is easier, because if you think about 64,000 properties, you can't look at them all at once, so we try to kind of think ahead about some of these things that we need to collect for data. Solar panels is another one too that we're picking up.
Rhonda, what was surprising for you or interesting as you looked through all of this data, and what did you learn from putting this together?
Well,
I guess I'm on the taxation side, but I have worked in assessing side, so for me, learning some of this stuff, I knew about the sales, but I didn't understand the usage of it to help the assessing side of it, to help figure out where they have to be in that range. So that was kind of a nice little thing to know and more information for me. So talking to customers, I can be a little bit more informed. But, and just on my side, the difference of the different programs, I have come from another county, and we didn't probably utilize the Green Acres or Rural Preserve in the aspect that Scott County does. A lot of the taxpayers did not know about those programs, and they are state programs. They aren't county specific. They are state programs that are out there for anybody to apply for.
Great, thanks.
Well, while we've got a pause here, I got a question. You're supposed to go out once every X amount of years, is it 5 years, and do an on-site inspection? I'm just curious about MLS data and pictures and so forth. If you said, well, this parcel, we haven't been out there, it's due to go out there, but we have a recent sale with 50 pictures, and does that eliminate the need to go out and look, or do you use MLS data? Is that fair game, or?
Yep, thank you, that's a great question. I touched on our use of the high-resolution street imagery, which is just one part of the Department of Revenue's allowed alternative reviews for that once every 5-year requirement you're talking about. If we have aerial photography that we can get measurements from, which we do, and if we have those street level imagery, which we do, and we have a connected permitting system in the county, so we get all of the building permits from all the jurisdictions, including the ones that we administered forwarded to our department. Those are the main requirements for being able to conduct an alternative review that I mentioned. And when we do that, all of our appraisers also have access to MLS. We have accounts. And we do use all of the information there. They will cycle through the pictures and review that, looking for condition, quality type of determinations. We just can't take those pictures and use them in our systems necessarily, so we cannot save those off and use them that way. But we can reference them and look at them to make determinations. That is part of our process.
When you talk about AI, are they grabbing that stuff from MLS and creating their database of what you get from AI, you think?
I would think so. I know that in order to download and use MLS information, like you can go on the Edina Realty site, for example, and see the same pictures usually. I know that there are legal disclaimers and things of if you can and can't take those and use them, but I would be surprised if there are not AI data collection systems out there acquiring information on properties through those types of means.
All right, I just jumped in because there was a pause there.
That was perfect. Christian, did you have something to add to that?
I was just gonna say, we've been exploring some of this at summer seminars and different get-togethers for our profession. And one of the ones that I saw recently is that they had 13 different models that all ran in conjunction to triangulate it using AI. So they use things like aerial imagery about the height of roof heights, how many windows are on a property. But the actual use of the private data, I would think that has to, like Mike said, it would have to come with licensing, but that's probably in the future, I would think. So, I mean, you already kind of see what Zestimate is doing with Zillow. The hard thing is that if you've noticed historically, unless there's a recent sale, a lot of those estimates are very close to the assessor value because they also use that as a data point too. So there can be kind of some bias, I guess, that can go into that if you were to rely on it for assessing profession. But the contractors right now are kind of discussing about how they use these different things, and really what it would take is back testing if you were going to explore that. Which one is better, how do you improve it, and then get to a point where you have enough confidence in some kind of AI value that you can support it. But I think that's the big point, is making sure you have confidence for the taxpayer.
Rhonda, you mentioned the homestead exclusions and some exclusions. Looking at page 27, can you talk to us about what impacts what those values are each year? Or help us understand this better?
Okay, so these are, like your green acres and your rural preserve are deferred. So basically what they are programs that the state offers. And if they apply and if they're accepted, so the value that they pay their tax on is gonna be lower, so then their taxes are gonna be lower. And if they go to sell the property, then they have to pay the current year and 2 years, so like 3 years of that deferred amount back. And that's what your green acres and your rural preserve is. And that was to help, because of the urbanization, to help farmers, so they weren't losing and basically falling because of the taking of the properties and stuff. And then the exclusions is your veterans one is for, if they're 70% disabled, they get 150,000 taken off their actual value, and so they only pay the tax on the remaining. And if they're 100% disabled, they get 300,000. I do know there is legislation, because it hasn't changed since 2008 for the veterans exclusion. They want to bump it up to 200,000 for the 70% and 400,000 for the 100%. And that, what they mean by that is when they're disabled, that means it's a process that the veterans go through, and then we have to get all this documentation from them before we can apply it. So, and then the homestead is just, it changed in 2025, but before that, if your house was 413.8 or higher, you actually did not get the homestead exclusion. You got homesteaded because that affects your property tax with the state, but you didn't really get any change in your taxes. So anything lower than that, you would. And then in 25, it changed to 517.2. So anything above that, you won't get the exclusion. So we do get calls, am I homesteaded? Yes, you are. You just don't get it because the value of your home is higher than what they have out there. So, and basically when that happens, when your value is lower and you're paying lower taxes, it spreads out to everybody else to pick up that.
To add to that, we saw that in just looking at our budgets for the year. So we report on what is the increase or decrease to homes because of how this tax system is set up. And a couple of years ago, we saw everybody's home going up, just about that we were throwing property tax, which was unusual for us. And that's where we realized if you see that year where it's getting very small, that homes were basically getting value, so they were outside of that. So we saw all of our homes getting impacted as opposed to it being more balanced where it's like a 60-40 split of homes seeing an increase in county taxes or a decrease. They were all seeing that increase because more and more of that value just wasn't counting towards an exclusion. And then obviously that happened across the state, and you saw a legislative change where it spiked back up as more homes were captured under that. So we even noticed it from a budget side, not even just the property tax side of how it was impacting our residents.
I wanted to ask on page 4, you talked about next steps, and they're, is not the right word, but there are a lot of, pretty aggressive, big things that could help. Where are you really focusing on those, and what's really important to you as you look at that list?
Thanks for the question. We're pursuing all of those. So, that was actually, developed from a list of things that we have in the works that we're either planning, or we've already started. So, other than that last bullet where it kind of touches on your first question of the day, which is just an ongoing, effort. But all of those next steps listed there, we've already started on.
Okay. Impressive.
Looking at page 16, this one is titled Net Levy versus New Construction and Inflation Combined. If you look at this chart, you generally see that the net levy appears to kind of generally match the combined total of the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and then the new construction percentage change. Can you tell us more about that and I noticed that the amounts seem to differ greatly in 2022 and 2023, and what might that look like if the amounts are different?
So I wait on pins and needles every March for Michael to send me one email, and it's like the same chain for like the last 10 years where he just updates it on what our new construction growth rate was and the impact of taxable market value. So this has been one of a number of indicators to say, how is our levy impacting our residents, and what does it mean for, are we growing at the same rate as the growth of the county? So we use new construction, and then we look at also the inflation, because those are things that drive new demand in our organization, whether it's the cost of the services we're delivering or the new residents that are needing the services. So that's where this comes from. If you look at 22 and 23, those were some years of very large inflation growth. If you kind of take the trajectory, and we've mapped this out in the past, our levy actually, if we had stayed at that level and kind of matched that, would probably still be tracking somewhat further down than where we are right now. So of a number of things, including the impact of state and federal legislation, one of the things that impact is that inflation did catch up to us. If you look at 24, 25, 26, we actually made changes to our budgeting and forecasting practice because we were having so much impact from inflation on the contracts we have, on the services we are purchasing, that we're seeing significant 10, 15% increases on like technology services, contracts, those sorts of things. So even as a trailing impact, we do see that inflation flow through, and when we're looking at our levy, and have tried to address that through our financial modeling as well. Did that answer your question, or did I ramble too much?
No, that's perfect, thank you. I was just thinking too, if we look at page 19, this talks about the percent of taxpayers who are delinquent. You mentioned budgeting for programs. How might this impact that?
So it doesn't have a massive impact in our budgeting. We do have some discrepancies in how much taxes collected due to delinquencies, but it's typically not enough to impact the overall budget. Like we've done for a long time, we try and take a conservative budgeting approach where we're always going to end up in the black at the end of the year. So typically, at least since I've been here, this has not had a significant impact. I would have to look to people who were here further back, and Steve Jones, unfortunately, is in the room as we got into the Great Recession and people potentially falling down. So I don't know if that had an impact in the past, but typically our budget can do that. We also do enough touching base with our different partners where we would be communicating, saying, hey, revenues aren't coming in. There's property tax issues, where we would know probably ahead of time that we needed to start tightening our belts throughout the course of the year to make sure we can make that. The other piece of that, and particularly in the last 10, 15 years, we've tried to have a healthy fund balance because that has to cover our costs until we get those property tax payments. And we try and manage that, so if there are some discrepancies in here, we can use that fund balance to address any shortfalls and then make adjustments for the next following year.
Into the gap. I'm, based on some of the conversation we've just had, I keep coming back to page 13, slide 13, right? Which is Scott County taxable market value compared to total personal income. And the explanation is lovely about why we would be concerned with seeing that split. But, I mean, we've also talked about its assessment, not necessarily, can you, in your role, sort of connect, what are we looking for? Is there points where, are there decision points or a spread that is concerning?
So I look at this, actually, I looked at this with another slide at the same time that kind of stood out to me, so sorry to make everyone jump around.
We'll never forgive you for this.
Yeah. There was also one about the median home value. Oh, I can't find that one. The average home value, there we go.
Yep.
So if you have page 10 and you look at it compared to page 13, that median home value is spiking up pretty substantially, or the average home value. And then the median household income is actually staying pretty flat. So that goes to me to talk about affordability within our community. And we are not the only driver of affordability, but property taxes are a piece of that affordability. I think one of the stories we wanted to tell in the personal income, and market value, that tracks pretty closely, but personal income you see is actually tailing up more than the median household income, which tells me that there's a larger growth on the upper end of the spectrum, but not necessarily in that median income. So average income would be higher than that median income. But for me, this talks about affordability and then also where is our growth coming from to afford it. The other thing about taxable market value and total personal income, not necessarily aligned, because it can talk about industrial and commercial that may not be that residential home. So we have those homes that are becoming harder to afford, income not keeping up, but our market value is still growing at a large rate, which does tell me that there is some commercial and industrial growth within there. But that actually, I would look to Michael then to talk about how commercial and industrial growth actually is taxed in the county, because that's another complex piece of our tax code, which is one of the things we want to make sure we're having residents understand is this, the complexity of the property tax assessments here in the state.
How does that work, Michael?
Taxation of commercial property types, well, I think we have a slide that breaks out,
2 and 23.
hypothetical commercial tax bills, which is maybe 24.
Yep.
And so the process is the same, they just are subject to different, additional taxes and different tax rate tiers, so. They have a bit higher class rate, so they're gonna pay more than residential, just as a principle. But then they also pay into the state general fund, so if you look on the left-hand side, 18% of this actual, example tax bill goes to the state general fund. 36% goes to fiscal disparities, which, a lot of property owners, when they see that, they mistake that money goes off into a pool and it just goes away. But it's part of a bigger formula that we contribute into it and then we get something back. We don't always get everything back. And that's kind of what we tried to adjust for on the right-hand side is, in actuality, about 10% of the total tax bill did go to the pool and never came back to our county. It didn't come back to a city, a county or a school. So then we adjusted the different portions for what did come back.
Is that consistent across cities and townships?
It's not necessarily consistent. The formula, was made back in the 70s, and I think it was in the effort to curtail competition between cities to give all kinds of goodies to get a business to come to their specific city, to kind of dampen that desire or maybe willingness to give those goodies to get them there. They wanted to create a shared tax base to kind of eliminate at least part of that desire, just because they thought that it would, I think, make growth more stable for the general region and area, and kind of curtail some of that competition. In doing so, they created the formula that is based in part on your commercial value at that time locked in compared to what it is now. And then there's also a population factor that goes into it. And basically, to really try to simplify it, what I'm trying to explain, areas that have had substantial commercial industrial growth in value, mainly due to new developments, are gonna pay in more and get back less, just generally speaking. So a city like Shakopee is probably gonna lose quite a bit each year, whereas another city where maybe the population has grown, more of a bedroom community that doesn't have a lot of commercial growth, could be a winner. So the county overall, when you look at all the money we put in to what we get out, I think that's on the next page, 25. And I think if we focus on the blue and purple lines, that's just dollars all together. The blue line is what we paid into the pool, and the purple line is what we got back. So you can kind of see that started diverging quite a bit in 2019, 2020. And it's kind of grown to the biggest gap countywide that we've seen. And we think that that's in part just because of the phenomenal amount of growth we have seen. I could list off, I don't know, just so many projects over the last 5 years that the county has seen come in and build. And then we also have some areas that are not doing as well in the metro area. You know, we've probably all seen some of the news articles regarding office buildings in downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul, and how those values have plummeted over the last, 4 or 5 years. So I think it's a combo factor that's impacting that. But overall, the county is definitely paying in more and getting out less than ever we have before. So.
Can you add to that? Can you speak to apartment living? You know, you're hearing how younger generations aren't necessarily buying homes anymore. And I live in Carver County. Victoria's put up 3 huge apartment buildings. How do those factor into your tax equation if that starts to shift and there's less one-family homes and apartments, or doesn't it?
Well, apartments, multifamily generally have a similar tax rate to residential. They do not pay on the much higher commercial industrial rates.
Okay.
There have been studies done as far as when you build an industrial building in an area versus a single-family home versus a multifamily home, which ones pay into the tax base the most as compared to demand on your services. So, in other words, a multifamily building, an apartment building, is probably going to increase demand on schools and different services, ambulance, just you can go down the list. Whereas an industrial building is going to pay the higher tax rate. Maybe it's not like a commercial business that the police are going to be out there all the time, and so there's just those kind of studies go kind of beyond what we do anything like that internally. But multifamily projects tend to have the lower rate, like similar to residential, and tend to increase more burden, generally speaking, I would say, on services.
From your respective areas, what has you most concerned going forward? And we'll start with Danny and we'll go left to right, if you don't mind.
If I go just to the first few pages, that has the most concern for me. As an organization, we focused on efficiency, we focused on providing the most value for our residents for the taxes they pay. We focused on not increasing and actually trying to decrease the cost of our service as we see growth so that we have more efficiency and capture that. And up until the last year or two, that has been the history of Scott County over the last 10, 15 years at least. And just in these last few years, driven largely by state, federal requirements, by lack of funding for state mandated services, I'm starting to see that go the other way, where more and more the mandated burdens are coming from the state and being put on our residents, and our board and our staff having very little control over what to do about that. So if you look at our personal income, for the first time since I've been here, the percentage of personal income that we take as an organization has gone up. The levy as a percentage of the annual budget has gone up and stayed up above 50%, where we've kind of hovered back and forth based on trends. We see that county program aid has stayed flat and gone down. Our tax rate has started to go up the last 2 years after a long, steady work to keep that going down. And yet we're seeing that affordability is becoming an issue in our community as well, and we're not helping that at this moment, despite cutting $1.6 million and looking to cut another $1 million from our budget because of other things that are happening. So right now, the affordability of the community and our control of that affordability is what's concerning to me the most right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I look ahead, I have kind of a different lens because it's more of a ground level one. But when I think ahead, I really struggle with whether or not legislation guidelines will be able to keep up with evolving technology. As you might understand, with the development of the physical capabilities of computers paired with software, paired with, at one point, maybe it's going to be able to accelerate itself. Are we able to keep up with legislation that will be able to take advantage of these, alleviate possible staffing constraints in the future? And then also, even maybe a bigger thing is, where does it go in the future, and making sure that we're preserving the rights to appeal and to be able to have accurate values. That's one thing I really want to get clear, is that we always care about having an accurate value, not so much about up or down. And I think leveraging tools, and then even with possible restrictions on when we would have to view things or what tools we are allowed to use, could be a big concern, just because if there's advantages in the marketplace or in the industry, I want to make sure that we're able to leverage them the best we can.
And I'll just go off of him as legislation for me, for the taxation part. So like your tax forfeited properties because of Hennepin and versus Tyler, all our tax forfeited process now has changed by legislation. And now we've been told that there is another case in Michigan that might affect our legislation again regarding our tax forfeited properties because of that case that's going on. And it's just, to me, and the other thing too is they're trying to get all counties to be consistent, which is never gonna happen because every county has their own way of doing things. So like with us, we have 78 different taxing districts. So that means there's 78 different things that we have to figure a rate for. So, you know, it's just different for each county, but yet legislation seems to think that we all do the same thing and everybody has a different interpretation of the statute. So when you reach out to one county, they're doing it this way. You reach out to another county, they're doing it this way. But your thought is not either one of those maybe, you know, so just more of that, just more consistency and I guess a little bit more guidance, not just giving us a broader thing, maybe being more specific in what, so that counties can be a lot more consistent across the board. So you aren't going from one county saying, well, this county does it this way. Well, we don't. Well, why not? You know, and we've gotten those calls where they're upset. Well, this county has allowed us to do it this way. Well, our policy is not allowing us. So just more that is what I feel is a lot of a issue and it's not really getting addressed.
I'm gonna stick with the legislative theme. You know, I've been in the industry over 20 years and I've seen us like get close to this happening, you know, time and time again, and it never happens, but it's the simplification. It grows, the statutes become more voluminous every year, just little by little though. Like one person didn't qualify for ag, they contacted their state legislature and they got exotic birds and ducks added as an egg product, kind of, and like they had a sentence or two written in for this one property in the entire state. And those little things happen every cycle. The big things that everyone seems to agree on about simplification, and we even had a property tax working group 8 or 9 years ago that was bipartisan, had experts from all different industries, and they came up with a really good consolidation of ideas for how we could simplify the tax code, make it easier to administer, more understandable for taxpayers. And it was all just this really great piece of work, and it just died. And it's like, it's still out there on the website, you can go find it and read it, and it still makes sense today. But those types of efforts, that's my biggest fear, is that we're just gonna keep adding little by little to the complexity, the intricacies of it, and we're never gonna have that one thing, the big bang kind of thing happen that everyone seems to agree on should and needs to happen.
Michael, in some of these classifications, how many parcels are actually utilizing it?
Statewide, it's hard to know. In the example I just gave you, so that's an agricultural property, but that's probably the only instance in the entire state where someone's qualifying for that class based on that additional requirement they added. So I would say we could get a report on statewide how many parcels are classified in each category as well. But some of them are just variations of the same thing. So residential versus, just blind disabled residential. So at some point they decided that should be a benefit, but could it be an income tax benefit, or are we really, adjusting property taxes for the owner or the person who lives there? Should that be done somewhere else versus the property tax system? So there's a lot of different examples like that too.
Thank you.
When you're considering livability, how does part of the numbers in Scott County compare When you're talking about livability, how does Scott County compared to the near metro and then the little larger metro area?
I don't think we pulled that data if you're talking about like income versus average home value. It's something we could pull, but we didn't pull that specifically to look at all of this. Michael may have something. He always has
I
this.
think the only comparison that we put into the materials that compares a tax amount, maybe, which is as close as we can get, is on page 30, where we used the same valued house and applied it to the different county tax rates. And I think it's important to note that someone might say, well, the average value in your county is different than the average value in other counties. And that's fair, and we can do a different analysis to look at those things. This one is specifically saying, we do have areas like, for example, New Prague. It's split, the city is split between two counties, and there's a $300,000 house that's very similar to a $300,000 house on either side of the county line. And this is illustrating their county portion of their tax difference. So I think this particular slide shows the county portion impact on maybe livability in some way because it's impacting your property taxes. And I think it shows Scott County in a pretty favorable comparison there.
To my co-facilitators, do you have any additional questions before we pass it on? Okay. And then to the panelists, is there anything else you would like to say before we pass it back to the board to ask their questions?
There were two when we were preparing this that were fascinating to me, page 20 and 21, that I just would see if Michael or Christian or Rhonda would kind of walk us through what's happening here. They were very interesting just to look at when we were prepping this material.
Sure, I can tell you what we're looking at here. So we fixed the same value home, similar to the measure I just talked about. It's controlling for the same value across all of our unique taxing areas. And this is kind of a summary of our unique taxing areas. There's actually a few more when you look at special districts. But what we wanted to show is every city and school, city or township and school combination in the county, what is the portion of your tax bill for each different segment entity? And that's based on the same house value. So then people, again, would respond back, well, the average house value in Credit River is a lot different than Belle Plaine City, for example. So on the next slide, on page 21, that's where we applied the average value for that city or township. It's not unique to the school district, but it is unique to the city or township, and then we applied that to the same set of observations. And so there you can see with the actual average in that area, what is the tax bill for those, the breakouts for those different tax authorities. And the other category, includes things like watersheds and mosquito control, and we put the household hazardous waste fee in there, so it's just a kind of a collection of all the miscellaneous special taxing districts and entities.
Michael, that is interesting, because it's the school district that defers the biggest, isn't it, when you have those same value average in those cities? Look at the difference between Lakeville and Prior Lake, what they contribute for school. Are those voter levies then? You wouldn't know that, I suppose.
The school portion is including the general and the voter approved.
It does have the voter approved in there,
And
yeah.
they're both in there together.
Perfect, anything?
Okay,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can I just, this does all these taxes on here, like, let's say Prior Lake, that doesn't include all the fees and franchise fees and stuff that they pay through utilities?
No, if it's not on their property tax bill, it's not included.
Okay, so this would kind of, if you were just looking at nothing but property taxes, it's a little bit skewed because they haven't included all the taxes that they'd really pay. Is that right? Okay.
Generally speaking, yes. I mean, we have heard that, different cities maybe collect money in different ways that
Okay.
is not a part of the property tax.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
that's a
Commissioner
good
Brennan,
point.
go ahead.
How does tax increment financing affect these numbers and does it have a negative or a positive effect on the communities? And maybe that's too much detail and.
Kind of did, but it's to help with housing. So what they do is they put the money on the tax parcels that are affected by the TIFs, which is your tax increment financing. And it's for redevelopment and development, right? And then there is other areas, but your most popular are your housing and redevelopment. So basically, it's to help pay for that, so it's not spread across the taxpayers, correct?
Yep,
So
so
it's-
there's going to be, we determine like our base amount for the 40 units, and then we determine.
Microphone.
And if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm Dana Anderson, Principal Tax Specialist. We determine each agreement is going to have a base assessment year and a base rate year. So we determine what that base amount is going to be. And then we are calculating the difference between what the current value is of the property using the base and the current year. So we're calculating that difference. So the amount of tax is still being collected, just a portion of that is going into the district to make sure that the district is funded.
Okay.
Commissioner, the increase, it's not that that's not being taxed, it's that those taxes are going back to the development in some fashion. Sometimes it's for infrastructure or something along those lines. So it wouldn't show up here as an impact. It's how it's spent on the back end once it's collected.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll pass it back to you,
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
I do have, well, I'll lead up with one, and then I'm sure the board has a bunch of questions. As commissioners, trust is very important. We want to be trustworthy to the public, that we want to be able to explain why we make decisions and what goes into that, and is it reasonable, is it understandable? We want a high level of trust. So I'm curious how that works out with somebody that comes in with a complaint about their property tax or their assessed value or whatever it is. I've sat in a few of them over the years, and I think you convey, what the reasonable approach taken, and you make it understandable, and you're not combative and so forth. But for those that don't go away feeling that, what are some of the causes, or that somebody would feel, well, I still don't really trust the county or the taxation? The reason I ask that is because I'm aware in other jurisdictions around the state where the county's not really trusted much, or the taxation department is not trusted at all, hardly. And I think we have a high level of trust, but do you want to comment on just that theme of trust and how that works out when you meet with people?
Yes, that's a great question. We go through training with our appraisers who are kind of the frontline people in those scenarios. When people are upset and a lot of times the tax impact is having a serious impact on their lives. And so we train our staff to be, factual in our response, that we can only do what's right. We can only change the values when it's appropriate. But being able to explain how we got there, the timelines, how the system works, giving them comparable sales that we hope will explain that, yeah, your value is appropriate when we can't make a change. Explaining how that can potentially impact other taxpayers if the squeaky wheel always got to change, how that impacts everybody else. But we also teach on, just being empathetic and listening and letting people vent and trying to address their concerns as best as we can. So One of the measures that's in our packet has to do with when you appealed your property value, did you feel like the process was fair or not? And we strive and as I said, we train with our staff every year that the way that they interact with the taxpayers hopefully will have them walk away, even if they didn't get a change and say, I disagree, but I still at least thought the process was fair. So I don't know of any other jurisdictions, that's one example where we kind of go above and beyond, that even care to ask people after that appeal process, did you think it was fair? Another question we asked that's not in the materials is, do you feel like you learned anything, like were educated or learned anything about how the property tax system works? That's another thing that's important to us that we train with our staff on. So hopefully those efforts are having that impact, that maybe there's more trust. We also, have gone out of our way, I think Rhonda mentioned before, that some programs aren't utilized much in other counties that maybe are statewide programs, and in her experience in other counties, as much as they are here. And it's probably because we've reached out to taxpayers when we thought maybe they were eligible for something that they weren't taking advantage of, and try to get those programs in front of them as well. So those are some of the efforts that we undertake.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'm thankful for that. Okay, other board members, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everybody. I think really good presentation. Love the slide about how many parcels each assessor has here in Scott County compared to others, because even though your work is just so very important, we shouldn't be spending a lot of money to figure out how to get the money to run the program. So I really appreciate it, and I think that's a gift to understand how important something is, but we can't spend a lot of money getting the money. One question that I just wonder if this is an error or I just don't understand something on page 21, where we have these comparisons for Helena Township. Between the two school districts, the township portion is different. Does Helena Township tax differently if the property is in a different school district, or is that, I feel like that should be consistent there, not a different number?
May I address this?
Yes, please.
So within Helena Township, there are multiple fire districts within that township. So each of
there
the
we
fire
go.
districts has their own rate within the township rate itself.
Thank you, that makes sense. And and I'm just saying this for the townships, and so like Belle Plaine Township has different fire districts, but they must somehow equalize it among their different, Belle Plaine Township has different fire districts, but they must somehow equalize it among their fire districts.
I think they're closer.
Okay, because it's 608 all across. Thank you, and I'm sure some people might have wondered about that. On page 29, Michael, you talked about how, it's only a few counties who are carrying more parcels per assessor. And I loved how you and Christian talked about, what's gonna come in the future to even change this number. Any ideas of what those several counties, who they are and what they're doing to get to, because that just seems amazing to get to that number.
I can give a little bit of insight, and Michael might be able to elaborate, but one thing I do want to point out is that we're a very diverse county. We have ag spread out, probably with our farther western reaches and east and everything. But we also have a lot of urban areas, and up and coming entertainment district and more concentrated housing. And so if you kind of think about that, as we don't have as much lock and grid type neighborhoods. So the parcels per appraiser, if you're walking next door to every house and it's only, you can look next door and you can see the house, whereas a lot of them might be spread out around the county. So 1 year out of our cycle, we actually go and we drive to all of the township parcels, because it kind of economically, it didn't make sense to drive cyclomedia or our street level imagery for those, because also we probably wouldn't be able to see them from the road. So I'm guessing, without knowing specifically, that it probably has to do with a more urban setting and being able to have more parcels per appraiser, because you have less transit and things too as well.
That makes sense, thank you. And then, finally, I think, I appreciated how all of you spoke about legislation, And I think there's often really well-intended legislation about property tax relief for certain populations of people. But I do think it's important for all of us to understand whenever we do that, we're reallocating the tax burden. And I don't think that legislators even understand that. I don't think that some people advocating for tax relief for certain groups of people understand that. So the more we can help explain that and make sure, sometimes it's still the right decision, but I think we need to acknowledge we're reallocating, and if somebody gets to pay less in property taxes, somebody else is paying more. So that's important. And then I just wanted to have you confirm or tell me I'm doing something wrong. For homestead applications a lot, I have residents tell me, maybe they purchased a new parcel or something. Well, my property value is so high, I'm not gonna get any relief anyways. I'm not even gonna fill out and apply for homestead. My answer has always been, I think you should anyways, because we don't know when the law, I think the recent change in valuation is a good example. Like, some people probably didn't get around to applying and then are missing that. Is there any reason I shouldn't be telling people that?
Absolutely not. I agree 100% that you should apply whether or not your home value already exceeds the threshold to get an annual value reduction benefit. I mean, there's just a number of different reasons, but as you already pointed out, property tax refunds would require that, things of that nature, and sometimes maybe there's a big surplus and there's a one-time refund, but it only goes to homestead or something like that. It's just good if it's your primary residence and it's legitimately, your primary residence, there really is no downside to homesteading. So take the time and do that, because we can't predict what benefits you may lose out on if you don't.
Thank you, and I think as we continue to advocate or encourage people to apply, that's even a good tagline. Even if you're not eligible for an exclusion, please apply. And it's just, in my mind, let's be accurate. Let's have accurate measures of what kind of property.
But they should anyway. We tell them to, even though, like you said, they don't get that. But the state has the property tax refund program. There's also one is if your property goes up a percentage.
Yes.
And they are looking at legislation, or they did change legislation on what your income is. Am I right on that, Dana? If I remember correctly? Your income changed if I think they went higher with it, so then you are now able to get that, if it changed in that amount, and then you can get a refund.
Good.
In that aspect, so.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. On that homestead question, in 2025, I think, Ronnie, you mentioned that the only change there was the valuation change, right, from like 4 something to 5?
Correct.
So when did that bigger hammer drop, when they really made that change, when that letter came out in the mail? Was that like the 90s or early 2000s?
Or when they went from they went from a credit to the homestead exclusion?
Maybe. It felt like.
That was in 2011, they had the
Okay.
credit. In 2012, they went to the homestead exclusion.
Because it seemed like that was one of those times where, you actually did get something for claiming homestead. Now it's a valuation, you might get it, you might not, but even if you should do it, because you never know what legislation might be coming. So I was just curious on that one. And then, so apparently I need to get exotic ducks, did I hear that right? Exotic ducks and other animals to claim ag deductions
I
for
can
my.
send you the checklist. You're gonna need some acreage to go along with that.
Okay, well, see what I can do on that. What do you, one of the questions we always ask, or gets asked in this, these types of sessions is, where would we like to be in a year? What we'd like to see in a year? I'm going down to the Capitol tomorrow, so legislation is always a big thing. Where would we like to be? What would we like to see this time next year? I know what I'd like to see, but I'm just curious.
I go back to the concern question, and I think I referenced the property tax working group paper that they did. I would love for that to be resurrected and maybe updated a bit, but the hard work that already went into it is a great roadmap, great template. Maybe could use some tweaks for changes over the last decade, but I'd love to see that all approved a year from now.
Because did I hear that in this county, we have 78 different distinctions? What's the correct?
Taxing districts.
And so if I remember right, in different meetings, there's been, did the state have like 60 classifications? Looking at Michael.
There's 61 if you count the lines on page.
On that, okay.
Yeah, 30 or whatever.
28.
28.
So 61 classifications, 78 taxing districts. Clear as mud, super easy. Yeah, so that working paper might lead to some level of reform. It'd be great to see that in this state, because we, just on last night, they talked about on TV news, rent is up 2.6%, over, I don't know what, I think it was like over February or something like that. People moving from the city out to the suburbs, because it's more affordable, which I'm like, where is anything more affordable? So I guess more commentary that we talk about, the collective we, not specifically here in Scott County, we talk about it, of course, but a lot of those decisions are in St. Paul. Affordability, looking at some of these reports, where do you think we're going from a tax, again, the collective we, from a taxing, capacity taxing number? Are we trending higher, generally speaking?
As in how much we tax?
Yeah. And again, it's not specific to Scott County because we get the mandates kicked down from St. Paul. We have to enact them. I should mention this, one of my trips to St. Paul last week or two, could see the Capitol in the background. I said, hey, we're trying to partner with you here in St. Paul. Like we're the hands and feet of your decisions down here at the county. And the comment was, but we're the brains, pointed to the Capitol. To which, I said, well, we could debate that to some extent. We both chuckled, and I wasn't trying to be funny, right? The reality is they're making the decisions that we have to enact down here. So with what we see in the pipeline, what is going to be coming that we already know of, where do you see taxes trending, just in general?
I think when you look at counties, and I'm gonna stick to that because that's what
Sure.
it's gonna continue to increase. We're not seeing increases in our revenue for state mandated services, and we're seeing more requirements pushed down on us. And so that means more of it's going onto the property tax levy.
And those are decisions that are rolling downhill to us, not decisions that we're making to arbitrarily raise taxes. So we need to get people involved however we can do that. Call your representative, call your senator, call us. We're carrying water down at the Capitol every week. With
Commissioner, I
that,
would like to answer your one legislative thing, HHS system modernization.
I feel like there's a button laying around here or something like that we will be carrying that water. And I just do want to say, to Chair Ulrich's discussion about being a trusted commodity, we have our TNT, we call it still, in December, Michael and you and your crew are down there. People think they're gonna come and talk about values, and it's more of just a presentation. You catch them, have great conversations. I always say, look at your tax notice. They were just mailed out this week. I got mine. There's an assessor name, there's an assessor number to, find out more information to figure out, is this a mass appraisal system? Was there an error? Was there not an error? Or taking the time to educate? Sometimes the answer is no. It is what it is, but just having the care and concern to convey that to people, I think goes a long way. So thank you and your crew for doing that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate the work you do. It's a tough job. It's a lot of work, but you do it well, and I think you are completely trustworthy in the way in your approach. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
We're on to item 8.1, which is presentation of the Spirit of Scott 2025 Quarter 3 and 4 recognition awards.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Greg Wagner, representing the Spirit of Scott with Caitlin Nidus from our Taxation Department. So we're here today to present the Spirit of Scott Awards for quarters 3 and 4 of 2025. So we're doing some catch-up today. As you know, the Spirit of Scott program is employee-nominated program for our fellow staff people who go above and beyond in their duties here working for the public of Scott County as well as other staff persons. So I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin to read the quarter 3 nominations, and then I will finish with quarter 4.
Good morning. Our first awardee is Blair Thornton, and he was actually nominated twice for what he provided to the county. Blair willingly assisted with a presentation to AMC by demonstrating the amount of time that it takes an eligibility worker to enter an application into the Maxis system. He was not given much notice and rescheduled a meeting in order to attend. Positive feedback was received about his piece of the presentation, and it demonstrated the need for the system modernization to the large audience across Minnesota. I appreciate Blair taking time out of his busy schedule to help with this. At the Minnesota County's annual conference on September 11th, Blair joined a live call to demonstrate his work in front of 300-plus county leaders and commissioners. He rearranged his schedule and came fully prepared to enter data and support the presentation. His demonstration clearly illustrated the need for upgrading your economic assistant IT systems and helped move the conversation forward. Blair's flexibility and professionalism made a real impact in making this a legislative priority for the AMC. So thank you, Blair. Our second nominee is Allie McNeil. I would like to nominate Allie McNeil for a Spirit of Scott. Allie goes above and beyond in assisting the public with navigating complex legal information, helps to provide clear guidance to those that need it in our community, and makes the law library a welcoming space where people feel supported during what are often stressful or confusing times. Her dedication and knowledge make her an asset to Scott County. And our last nominee for quarter 3 was Jason Allen. And we did get a picture of Jason, so there he is. I would like to nominate Jason Allen along with his wife Heidi Jo for making the Goats and Cones events so very successful. Jason and Heidi agreed to share 5 of their 21 goats with Scott County employees for an afternoon to de-stress and socialize together. This enormous favor not only involved time and energy for that day, but Jason also created a pen to allow staff to go in and play with the goats, while keeping them safe. Jason also had to borrow a trailer, load all the supplies and the goats, and then unload the trailer and return it. Plus, Heidi had to take the day off of work. Jason, yours and Heidi's selfless generosity is so greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for going way above and beyond for our Scott County employees.
For quarter 4, 2025, Amanda Schultz and Nancy Burnt were nominated by Gretchen Young. Gretchen wanted to acknowledge all the work that Amanda and Nancy have taken on with the departure of another licensor in absorbing all the childcare licensing caseload. They have both been very dedicated to making sure that all the providers who need a visit yet last year were getting seen, which is a significant increase to their caseload. They have worked together to come up with a plan and have communicated back when they had questions or needed support. And they have received that support from the rest of the unit who have taken on other tasks so they can focus on childcare visits. Gretchen greatly appreciates their hard work. And our last quarter 4 nominee was Stacy Ward. Stacy stepped in when there was a medical emergency in the lobby. She was the nurse in the office, and she took time to check on a client who had fallen in the lobby. She was able to speak with the client, who mainly spoke Spanish, and reassure her that we had an ambulance on the way. She is always someone who is willing to step in, whether it be a medical emergency or just help schedule an appointment with a client. So thank you, Stacy, and thank you to all of our nominees who continue to do great work for our fellow employees and the public.
Thank you. Just one little comment I'd like to make. I think at scale, it might be good to have the law library present, a 10 or 15 minute segment at, say, scale. That might be very interesting information to our scale partners. Okay, we're on to item 10 now, committee reports and commissioner updates. Commissioner Brecky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last board meeting was on March 3rd. We did have a workshop after that board meeting that we all attended. Also after that board meeting, I jumped on a virtual meeting with State Representative Dawn Gilman and Barb Dahl, Suzanne Arnston, and Nikki Hallberg to talk about the MAFPA Act and some potential changes that could be made to that. March 4th and 5th, I enjoyed participating in the AMC Legislative Conference. Most of the meetings I went to on those days really was around human services, systems modernization. I'm trying to mitigate the impacts to counties because of the HR1 changes and seeing if there's any appetite for making some changes to the MAFPA Act or at least allowing counties some funding. So I think that was early in the session. I think spirits were a little higher there than they are right now, maybe, but we'll continue to work on those priorities. March 5th had the AMC board meeting. March 9th, the county administrator and I met with the City of Jordan mayor and city administrator and council member whips for our quarterly meeting, talked mostly about development and road issues that Jordan's dealing with right now. March 10th, I had a phone call on strategic planning for the CAP agency. Also on March 10th, had my monthly meeting with our county administrator, and that day was also the CAP monthly board meeting. March 11th, I attended the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce Main Street Breakfast, really good presentation by the chamber on not just visitors to Shakopee, but really to the greater Scott County area, tourism visitors, the amount of impact that is. And there was a good presentation on the Drive by 5 program that was on our agenda today, talking about the number of folks who met certain criteria, getting some training and being employed, which I think is good for everybody. Also, on March 11th, had MICA board meeting. March 12th, had a SHAC meeting, the statewide community health, the Public Health State Committee. I can't even remember what the acronym stands for. March 13th was our Scale monthly membership meeting. Yesterday on March 16th, I had a meeting with one of our newest employees, Jeff Tate. Good meeting to talk with Jeff and talk about the initiatives he'll be working on. And then also had a board meeting for the Transportation Alliance. And then I have received a few more calls about the rifle opt-out legislation and the different steps that adjoining counties are taking. I think Leslie has kept us apprised that most of our surrounding counties have not taken any action to opt out. I think that continues to inform us, as we don't want to be an island, certainly, but still taking a few calls. And I know LeSueur County is having their public hearing tonight, I think, or a second public hearing. I heard from Commissioner Teets about that, and that's kind of the one adjoining county that we're really waiting to see what they do. And Mr. Chair, that's under my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Wolf.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 3rd, New Market Township had their monthly meeting. The 4th, the AMC, there was went to the Capitol and did some lobbying. On the 10th, Cedar Lake and Spring Lake Township, that's their annual meeting nights. On the 11th, MESB. On the 12th, I-35 Solutions met. And the big topic there was I-35 and 494. It seems like that project just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I don't know if you think that or not, but it's just, it's like, was that there last month? Well, anyhow. So, but hopefully they're still gonna be done next year, whenever, but, then, Library Finance met after that. Went down to the Capitol and, talked about, Three River Parks. Elko New Market had their city council meeting, and, that night, the, Lakeville superintendent or assistant came and talked about the school referendum. That's coming in May. They have quite a number of students coming there. They are doing a lot of building in Lakeville. I thought they said 4,000 more students in the next 3 or 4 years. So, but there was one thing that some of the council members were still not happy with, is they shrunk the number of voting places down to 4. And so anybody in Elko New Market City would probably have to travel 10 to 12 miles to vote. So they're trying to remedy that. And then Spring Lake had their monthly meeting after that, and then Scale on the 13th. And then last night they had Credit River, had their one of their 2 monthly meetings. They were talking a little bit about 20-year plans for sewer and water to some of the little places like Casey addition, Creek Wood, and over by the Franciscan Retreat, and how to get sewer and water to them. And it's not going to be quick, and it's not going to be cheap. And that is my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you. March 3rd, I attended the Shakopee City Council meeting. Jamie Pearson was sworn in as police chief, and that was a really good turnout. So congratulations to Shakopee. March 4th and 5th was the AMC Legislative Conference. March 9th was the Suburban Transit Board meeting. March 10th was the Community Development Agency meeting. The board approved the demolition of property in Savage. The properties will be developed, and the concept plan is for 150 units of workforce housing. After the meeting, we toured the new homeowner community land trust home that is currently under construction in Shakopee. That's a total of 4 homes that are being under construction. March 11th, I went to the MICA. March 12th was Parks at the Capitol event, and I was able to speak on system modernization while I was there, so got to put that out there whenever you can. March 13th was Scale. March 13th, I had a meeting with Leslie Vermillion, and March 16th, I had my meeting with Jeff Tate, which was great. And also, I want to let you know that organics recycling drop-off is in the parking lot on Holmes and Fifth, so that's open to the community. I've been there a couple times, so it's great for this area to be able to drop off organics. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Beer.
Thank you very much. March 3rd, post-board workshop, monthly administrator meeting, and also attended, went to Shakopee City Council for the swearing-in of Jamie Pearson. I mean, they had a great chief. I can't look at him and not say chief. And so Jamie is going to be a great addition, following Chief Tate's big footsteps, big shoes to fill. And so very happy that she got that unanimous, I believe. The 4th and 5th, as mentioned, the AMC Legislative Conference. Really got to talk with many in our delegation, but I was really trying to meet some new folks. Went with Commissioner Drosty from Dakota and met some of his folks. Same voice, but I think it's good for other folks in the delegation to hear other voices outside from their specific counties to understand that we are all pretty much lockstep on some of these things. System modernization, I think I heard the governor actually talking about that this week in a news conference. We have been talking about that for so long, this system modernization, and not for convenience sake. I mean, yes, that's a great byproduct, but holy cow. Having systems linked, almost like an airport, if you will, a terminal, and you have the different gates, you can go to your different spots, but all of these different systems that are working would be tied together in the back end to be able to catch fraud quicker. Wouldn't that be something? I don't understand why that is not just a front burner issue for both teams at St. Paul. I'll be there tomorrow and we'll keep asking, but holy cow, let's nip this fraud in the bud. And system modernization will go a long way of doing that. And put those hands and feet. I know we're not the brains according to some in St. Paul, but we're the hands and feet, I think the brains too. So let's get our hands and feet to the people that actually need that help by modernizing these systems. An AMC board after that legislative conference on the 5th. On the 10th, I think it was the 10th, FISH program. I think that was our first lunch and learn. Was that our first lunch and learn on that Thursday, the 10th? If you feed them, they will come. I think that's a saying. It was Taco Thursday, and the place right down the hall on the other side of the building was packed. North Star was the keynote, and I don't know if it was the program, probably the program or the tacos, but it filled the room, so it was good. It was good showing for FISH. The 11th, MESB. Sorry, you know what? That was the lunch and learn was on the 12th. FISH program was on the 10th, but nonetheless, it was awesome. Scott County Prevention Coalition also on the 12th. 13th was Scale, Michael and Company. Another presentation on property taxes. So I think part of that goes a long way in building trust with the community that you're out giving the presentation. It's now been here twice, which will be online. So hopefully we get more viewers, ones and ones. Today, happy St. Patrick's Day. Be responsible, have fun, enjoy. And to my Finnish friends, mainly northern Minnesota, happy St. Euros Day yesterday. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Just a little comment on the lunch and learn. eventually, like in September, the Lunch and Learn and Fish will meet off, not on government property, but still in Shakopee. And we're gonna have sort of a fish-type themed bucket where people, if they want to, can contribute to the cost of the lunch. You know, we believe that some will want to help undergird that cost a little bit. And so it won't be a heavy burden on fish itself. But, you know, that second Thursday meeting is really sort of the lifeblood of fish. It, just like Scale, the second Friday meeting that they have, is really very key to the success of Scale. Same with fish. And so we view that as very important. And if it does cost a little bit, that's okay. But we do, again, expect or hope for people that would really be willing to contribute a little bit towards that. Okay, my report. On the 6th, we had the RTF Joint Powers Board meeting, and at that meeting, we talked about a subject that has been talked about numerous times, is what's the next step or the next ask? What would be the dollar amount of an ask? And I'm talking a legislative ask. And, you know, all the studies have shown a certain component of parts that would be in the next ask, whether it's a gun cleaning room or lockers or, I can't tell you what is in that package, but I do know it's about $6-7 million. And Representative Steyer is said they'd put forward a bill now. And the understanding, you know, that we all have probably is that you got to ask several times before you get the money. And also, an ask in this category doesn't compete against other asks that the county might have because things are funded by category, you know. They're gonna fund so much in this category, and this category, and this category, and Representative Steyer has felt that a multi-jurisdictional training facility, you know, might attract funding, so he's gonna put forward a bill. And again, we've always felt that asking overtime, maybe you have to ask 2 or 3 times before you get something. That's a no one. Somebody at that meeting misunderstood the whole conversation. They thought I was saying that the county has $6 or $7 million, which I never did say. And I can't believe that misunderstanding occurred because I don't know, we talked about it at length. Okay, same day we had a legislative breakfast prep because on the 9th was our legislative breakfast down at the Capitol. We had about 7 legislators there. There were some things that were competing directly with the breakfast. Most of the legislators there were really upset about Kosnick's bill in the House, and then there's multiple authors in the Senate that would do away with the opt-outs. They were really upset about that. That Kosnick didn't even really consult any other suburban or very limited, I should say any, but consulted very few suburban legislators about that, and they were upset. And we'll see what happens there. It's got to go to another committee now, and I don't think it's going to get a favorable response at the next committee. But, you know, the legislature's a strange creature. Something could get thrown in a bill that didn't go through all the steps, so that's probably a worry. Okay. We also had the STA board meeting after that, and, you know, STA, Suburban Transit Association, is under attack, you know, under threat, you know. There was a report that came out that had a number of MVTA rides, for example, that were high subsidy rides, very high cost. But those rides mostly, I think there was like a dozen of them or something like that. At least 8 of those were phased out or combined with others. So there was changes long before the report even came out with those rides. I think it's really time for Luther to come at a county workshop where he would maybe talk about 2 things. The performance of rides and also staffing levels and also what's the future with STA, or not STA, but Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. I think we should hear from him directly because he is, at our breakfast, we just presented the work and the importance of the value proposition of having opt-outs. He didn't go in so much a response to this report, but he has a detailed response to the report, so I think we need to hear that. Okay, on the 10th, Fish Programming Committee, 11th, monthly meeting with Leslie Vermillion. Also had a check-in with Rachel Residence. Our board is meeting in Tuesdays or Threesies with Rachel on an ongoing basis. It rotates who's going to be meeting with her, and I know Rachel also wants to meet one-on-one with all of you. She's a go-getter, and she's doing a great job. On the 12th, the final 169 Corridor Coalition Officers meeting. And somebody even at that meeting said, well, do we really need another meeting? And everybody goes, no, we don't. Not another whole meeting, an officers meeting. And we're pretty insistent that we didn't. And so between the county and the Historical Society, we want to preserve the documents, the website and so forth, in case that the coalition is needed to be re-energized or re-engaged in the future. Probably will be with things like another lane on 169 or the Bloomington Ferry Bridge expansion, whatever. There's probably within the next 10 years going to be a need to restart that. 13th, scale. That's the end of my report. Yes.
Yeah, quick question or comment, if I may. One of the things I'm going to mention in the round robin section of our workshop coming up is scale comms. Talking about, miscommunication. We had a very, very minor, but still proved a point, scale comms misunderstanding at scale on Friday morning in a group of folks. So I am going to bring that up. I don't know how far it's going to go or deep in this particular workshop, but I think it's important. And I always think that, like, Leslie, you and I took that RTF tour, so to speak, like years and years and years ago, because it's always struck me as, A, it should be a, haunted house in the fall, but B, like, how do we better utilize this thing in general? And Chief Steer, chief, once a chief, always a chief, still a chief, is great in carrying some of these bills for public safety, and I just can't help but wondering, and I know we've talked about it in our legislative priorities, if the RTF doesn't carry some fun little weight this year with things being as close as they are at St. Paul. I know we have to be careful for bonding because it's talking about a match, which we need to be careful of that. But if some grants that public safety might be an island that both teams can get behind is, I know it's not the priority, but it's something to talk about. But I just wanted to mention I'll be talking about scale comms with all of our different service delivery, scale exec tech. How do we best manage that? And I know it's bigger than just the county, so I'm going to bring that up in the workshop. Thanks.
All right. County Administrator update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple things I wanted to just raise. One, I want to give a shout out to Marina down at Customer Service and Sydney here sitting next to my right. And even though Tracy isn't here, we had a last minute request for a Ducks Unlimited gambling permit. And, it came in last Thursday when Tracy was ready to go out the door. And our staff found a way, working with the sheriff's office and the township and accounting, to get it approved so that it was done. Did not have to come to the board as it was exempt permit, but just kudos to them. They were going to get it on the board if it needed to, and they worked really hard to get that through so that they had their permit in time. So thanks to them. I also want to say thank you to Michael Bergstrom. He has been out meeting with folks in some churches, and they've identified some families that had some need. He reached out and coordinated with Hosanna and Hart, who brought those needs to the church, and it was met for those families. So again, working together and having the community step up in his coordination and knowing folks was valuable. A shout out to Commissioner Brennan, who at the Parks and Pizza did say parks funding is important, but the highest priority for all 87 counties was system modernization. And so that's been a message we've been talking about as administrators. If those are truly the priorities, we need to be talking about it everywhere we go. So it was a good reminder, and thank you for doing that. Yesterday, we had a very interesting meeting with the leadership teams from Carver and Dakota and Scott County. We had topics on there like medical directors, emergency management, human service, libraries, communication was one of them. Walked away with some to-dos and a month to do some high-level work. And so I couldn't be any prouder of Barb and Brad and Danny and Luke and Jake and Katie, who just provide leadership in those meetings and throw out ideas. And if things like statutes look like an obstacle, they find a way to use the statute as a way to get something done. So kudos to all of them for their creativity and leadership on that. I think one of them that Barb raised yesterday, that we have to figure out how to provide a different message. One of you asked Danny what one of his biggest concerns was, but we learned yesterday from Barb that for child protection, the state has had a capped allotment of their contribution at $23.5 million since 2015. I'd like to know one thing that hasn't increased since 2015, including growth in the state of Minnesota. But 50% of that formula is your population of children under 18, 25% is on your screenings, and then 25% on your caseloads, with an equalization of 78,000 for all 87 counties, which is typical to a lot of formulas. But the bigger concern there that I think we have to figure out how to tell a better story on is there's nothing in there for prevention. There's no incentive for prevention. So actually, the worse results you have, or the more people you allow into a deep end system, you almost get rewarded for it. And so how do we talk about that as we move forward in that messaging and graphically show that so that we can have, I think, more educated discussions on it? And then,
Leslie, can't you remove the word almost from that, right?
Yeah.
That's legit. You are rewarded for worse results, worse outcomes.
Yeah, and I think when Commissioner Brecky talked, they were talking about the act with Barb and Suzanne and Nikki. I mean, that's what we've been trying to say. It's more money into deep end instead of putting those dollars into prevention and keeping people out. So just like anything, prevention, it doesn't matter if it's infrastructure or people, I think you'll have better results. And then finally, another big one is I want to thank Jake and Brad and Chris and Troy and Craig up in the highway department. I think Lisa Fries maybe helped a little bit as well. But we submitted our next two appropriation requests to Commissioner Craig's office in time, and very well done with Marcus's support. 1.8 million for the RTF fire upgrades, and then $10 million for Trunk Highway 13. They were both submitted, and those guys worked extra hard to get it done. We had very short notice. We're still waiting for Senator and Klobuchar and Smith states, but we'll get those in as they come out as well. So that's the end of my report.
All right. I do have one thing commenting about our round robin that I'll mention here. It's the category of proclamations. My understanding with proclamations is that we just make them related to stuff that the county is intimately works with, not stuff that we don't work with, but we'll discuss that at the round robin. Go ahead, County Administrator, County Attorney update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies to the board. I stepped out dealing with an issue, so I thought it best I just step out rather than keep getting up and down, up and down. And with that said, I came back for my all-important sentence. We do not need to meet.
Yay. Taking a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We got a motion and a second, and before we vote on that, I want to mention that the workshops we're going to be going into are for the Blue Earth County Waste to Energy Opportunity, a transit discussion, and then a round robin. Okay, we have motion and a second, all those